Lech Lecha, there's Parshas. There used to be a cycle. They didn't finish Torah every year. Used to be. The Gemara talks about it. I think they finished every 3 years, Baruch. In the Bereshis Parshas, it was probably Myrdik. Can you imagine spending like 2-3 weeks in easy Parshas? Okay, then then when you get to the latter Parshas, okay, it gets a little difficult. But like Bereshis, Noach, Lecha, you could talk. It's unlimited, Baruch Hashem. So let's do a little bit. Talk a little bit about the Parsha together. Avram Avinu. We have the first Av. We had Noach, which was a big tzaddik, Baruch Hashem. We had Adam Arishain, who was the first Adam, and now we have the first Av, Avraham Avinu. What does it mean that he was an Av? What exactly does that mean? Why was he an Av? Noach wasn't an Av. Why was he an Av? So everyone discusses this. Just to read one line from the Ruach Chaim over here, of Chaim Volozhin writes, he says that Asar Nisyonis Esas Avram Avinu, Kan Amar Avram Avinu, whereas prior it said just Avram, V'loimer Avinu, Yiratzav Azel Pimashe Kasam Mishalech B'tumay Tzadik Ashrei Banav Acharav. Ki Kama Midas, this is the line. The Midas, good evening. Kama Midas She'at Tzadik Tarach V'yagia V'yasigim. Whatever midah you put into yourself, that midah lebanav acharav hema kiteva mutva. It goes into your genes, it goes into your DNA, and the children can get it. Biksas yigia yagilazeh. They get it easier than you did. You worked on kas. Let's say a person gets angry, and he worked on it, and he worked on himself. His children will have an easier time not being bekas. Why? Because he's an Av, and what an Av means, we all know the Gemara of Bava Kama, Avos Mechlal, Diika Toldos. If you're an Av, that means you give off to the Toldos, to the next generation. Chaim Volozhin explains over here, Avram Avinu, because he was the first one that was a mushrash, he built it in to give it off to the next generation. Of course, that's the 10 Asar Nisyonos Nisyasa Avram Avinu. But for a few minutes tonight, I want to go to a little bit of a different topic, because I think everyone talks about the Nisyonos, which is Gavaldik, and Nisyonos are never ending, and therefore we can talk about them forever, and I think in the past we have, I think, and who knows, could be over Shabbos, we will again, but I like to talk about the different part of the Parsha. The Parsha says, Avram Avinu is posed with a problem, and he's worried that the Mitzrayim are going to take his wife Sarai. So what does Avram Avinu tell his wife? Tell them that you are my sister. We all remember the story. And it's an interesting story. Interesting. Do you ever think about it? Like Avram Avinu. Like, what were you doing? You lying? Why are you so nervous? So the Ramban, if the Ramban didn't say this, definitely no one... Oh, that's Pashib Shot. I agree. The Ramban comes along and he says a startling line. Vida, ki Avram Avinu chata chet gadol. Avram Avinu. Of course, we remind ourselves, and we'll re-remind ourselves when we talk about the Avos, and then we're going to talk about the Shvatim, and when we talk about anyone in Chumash, we have to be careful. Obviously, it's on their level. But says the Ramban, Avram Avinu sinned a great sin. What was his great sin? Bishkago, with the mistake, shehevi ishtay hatzadik, is that he took his wife b'michshol avain, in such a stumbling block, because he was afraid pen yargu, like you just said. He was afraid sekanas nefashis. So what's the problem? Who's sekanas nefashis? You're allowed to save your life, are you not? Says the Ramban, v'haya loy liv tayach, he should have had bitachon. B'shem with Hashem. So obviously now we can understand someone on the level of Avram Avinu. What are you doing? It's like Kanas Devashes. Have bitachon. Believe in Hashem. It's a chet gadol, says the Ramban. Oh, true. He was preventing a terrible story, but the answer is he should have just believed that whatever would have happened, right? We all know stories of many tzaddikim. I think the most famous are of the Vilna Gaon, how he would think Einan Bilvadai, and he was wearing his tefillin, and he should walk right through, and there would be no harm, and so that's the gain. Avram Avinu. So he should have went, and he should have stood up tall with his wife and just walked right through. They would have taken them. Obviously, Hashem would have protected. But what's fascinating, before we go further, is, and this is really how all matters of bitachon work. What we think is the right thing to do when it's wrong is the biggest aveira. And if we would have done the opposite, Hashem would have taken care of us. Meaning, let's just play it out. Someone says, let's go to something that hopefully none of us are holding. Rahman al-Itzlan, the Nisayan of working on Shabbos. He says, I have no money. What am I going to do? I'm not going to make it. So he goes and works at Shabbos. Whereas, if he would have not worked, Hashem would have taken care of him. Now that he's doing the Chei Gadol, Hashem's going to take care of you? What are you, crazy? You're slapping God in the face and you want him to help you? So the opposite, which is bitachon, which is extremely, extremely difficult. Obviously, there's a very large balance, which is the very big difficulty of bitachon, which is hishtadlus versus bitachon. And hopefully we'll touch upon that a little bit. But on Avram Avinu...
He did that in the
which is true. Avram Avinu. So
he did the right thing. Now he's kind of
right. So which I guess is really what the Ramban is teaching us is you Avram Avinu. You heard, and it's probably we'll talk about this in Shabbos. What was the big deal? Lech Lecha. What was the big deal? If Hashem told you Lech Lecha, you would have gone also. What's the big deal? So they quote the Zohar, the Sfas Emes. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but now that you mentioned it, the Sfas Emes quotes the Zohar, and the Sfas Emes says that in reality, he asks, why don't we say the praises of Avram Avinu? We start right away. Avram Avinu Lecha. By Noach, we spoke about him, his greatness. Avram Avinu, he does. He says, no, this was his greatness. Why? That he heard Lech Lecha. There are baskals all day. Do you hear Hashem talking to you? The greatness of Avram Avinu was that he heard Hashem. And then he went. That is the greatest praise to give a person. Avram Avinu. Oh, it's very famous. The first Sfas Emes in the Parsha. So if you open it, you can't miss it. Says Sfas Emes, that was his praise, which
could have said before, like escaping
which to put into current events, which I didn't plan on going this route, but just once we open the floor, we always, and I said this last week in Shalosh Shuddis, and it was a thought that came to me, and I think it's worthwhile sharing again. I think we always all lived our lives saying, if we were to live through event A, B, C, or D, we would be different people. And then as we live through event A, B, C, and D, we're like, the next one will get you, God. We lived, just to use the past few years, right? During COVID, everyone said, oh, this is it. Mashiach's here. That's it. Finished. Within a few minutes, not only unfortunately, and we don't want to, no one should talk bad about Klal Yisrael, but even, we walked back to our shuls and we danced and we sang, we have our shuls and we don't have to daven at home anymore, and we don't have to, and then walking 5-6 minutes, let's just make a minyan in the dining room, what's the big deal, again, al tiftach peh, no one wants to say anything, but then what happens? We have the worst massacre that's happened in over 50 years for sure, it's no question. This is what the pogroms were, and we're like, Hashem's talking to, no, we have to be the Lech Lecha. We have to hear the call. Now, what do we have to do? Okay, that's the Avodah, is just to do something, but number one is to realize Hashem is talking to you, and that was Avram Avinu's greatness. But back to the Ramban, Ramban says Avram Avinu dropped the ball. Chei Gadol, yes.
Wasn't this one of the Nisyanis?
And that he failed.
Right.
Oh, could be. Maybe, but we know that, meaning maybe there was really 11 and they only passed 10. Interesting thought. Maybe interesting. Very interesting. This is sheet is the Rambam. But now, if we continue in the Chumash, and the Maharal is very bothered, is that when the story continues, the story replays itself out again. The story replays itself again by Avimelech. And what does Avram Avinu say again? Again, Avram Avinu says, the first pasuk was in Parak Yud Beis, the next pasuk is in Parak Chav. Avram Avinu says again to Sarah now, that you're my sister. How did he drop the ball again? How did Avram Avinu? How did you ask? That's the Maral's kasha. The Maral, and then he says the same thing we find by Yitzchak. The Yitzchak told Rivka to say Achaisihi.
Maybe they felt that if I say that she's my wife, I'm relying on a miracle.
Meaning that counterbalance. Right. Good. That's sort of what Ravi was saying. That's sort of the counterbalance. Is that maybe this is too far? Again, this is the sheet of the Ramban. This is the kasha. Now, from the question of the Maral, what do we see? Obviously, Avraham Avinu didn't mess up again. And obviously, Yitzchak Avinu didn't mess up in the same regard. So there's obviously something much deeper going on over here. And someone today, this showed me, I have no clue who this is. It's a wonderful sefer. It's Shirei Nachal Elio, I think it's Elio Diskin. And he says a beautiful mashal in Bitachon that he takes out of this story. And he says there's another Ramban. And the Ramban, later on in Parshas Shemais, teaches us about Bitachon. And he says that, it's going to be a little bit of a deep point, but hopefully with the mashal will come clear, that when you act in a certain way of hishtadlus, that becomes what you need to do in the world of hishtadlus. Let me say that again. For example, if we have this massive tzaddik and he subsides on next to nothing, and one day, unfortunately, whatever happens, and he decides, you know what, that's it, I can't do it anymore, and I need to go make a lot of money. And he goes out and he makes a lot of money. The way that Hashem built the world is that he's now going to need to continue doing that level of ishtadlus. For the last 10 years, he didn't need to do that. If you do more, then you're going to have to continue doing more. If you're doing more ishtadlus, then Hashem says, you want to do ishtadlus? No problem. Keep on doing your ishtadlus. That's what you have to do. Says the Ramban, and this Sefer Nachal Yo explains beautifully. Avraham Avinu only messed up one time. But once he messed up, once he said Achaisihi, that became his level of ishtadlus. That became what he needed to do now. So the next time, he couldn't rely on a miracle anymore. It's true, if you would have came in the first time, standing in tall, and he would have said, that's it, who's this? This is my wife. Maybe all the Mitzrayim would have dropped dead on the spot. He has bitachon, Hashem would have taken care of him. But once he went and utilized natural means, now you have to continue playing the game with natural means. And now he says a story. It's a little bit of a perhaps cheesy story, but it really brings out the point very nicely about bitachon. He says Zamaisi Yadua with the Saba min Navardik, the Alter of Navardik, who we all know the Alter of Navardik was bitachon. If there was someone that is bitachon, that was the Alter. If anyone is looking for some readings on bitachon, aside for obviously the Shar HaBitachon, which every time I start learning it again, I wonder why we don't spend 3 minutes every single day of our life doing it. It just makes us happier. You just read how Hashem's going to take care of you, and you're going to be calmer, and there's nothing to worry about. It's like all the new age remedies, like just calm down, take a deep breath, Hashem's there for you. It's mamish all there, straight up, Rabbeinu B'chai. It's beautiful. Mamish therapy, 3, 4, 5 minutes a day. We're different people. But additionally, the Alter Navardik has a Maimer HaBitachon, and the Reshiva Repair, where he's in Yeshiva Frakwe, he gave many shiurim on it, and they just wrote them up. It's called Faith Over Fear. They did a beautiful job with stories, very, very nice, fluffy reading. Really, really, so you're looking for something on Bitachon. But back to the story over here. Talmidim came to Alter Navardik, and they said to him, Rabbeinu, anachnu royim shemaisim ishtadlus. The classical kasha. Rabbi, I don't understand. If we do ishtadlus, if we go and we get a job, marvichen, guess what? We make money. Mish parnas. Vim lo yosin ishtadlus. Guess what? Any parnas. We don't have any money. Amar lam estaber navardik. The Alter says, let me explain to you what's going on. Hayapam zug sayer. Very cute story. There was an elderly, it was a young couple. After their wedding, they wanted to know, what job should we go into? Mimalis parnes. Who writes that the husband wants to be a sandler? He wants to be a shoemaker. He and his wife says, no, you know you should be? A watch repairman. So the husband, he decides, he took his Shalom Bayis classes, he'll listen to his new wife. So he decides he's going to listen to his wife, and he opens up a store for watches, to fix watches. And that was his parnasa. Everything was great until they lived a long and beautiful life. They got to an elder age, 60, 70, 80, and one time they're sitting down, a cute little elderly couple, and his wife turns to him. And his wife says, Yankala, it's a miracle you listened to me. Remember 60 years ago? Remember, we didn't know, should he become a watchman? Should he become a shoe repairman? And I told you, watch. It's such a nace you listened to me. What's the nace? Atazecher, you remember Sherzita Leo Sandler? You wanted to be a shoeman? Can you imagine? Imayisi Sandler, Chalila, Hayina Gavayim Barav. We would have perished in famine. Why? Kol Yaim. What happened every day? Hayabayim Pai, Asaras Anashim, tens of people with their watches. And you saw with your own eyes. Then not one time did someone come with their shoes for you to fix. To your watch repair shop. Amar Labaila, Matla Mevina, what are you talking about? If I would have opened a shoe store, what would they have brought? Their shoes. But now that I opened a watch store, they bring the watches. Says the Hilig Alter Min Avardik. Someone who makes a decision that his parnasa is going to come from shoes. The Tziner from Shemayim says he'll have parnasa from shoes. Someone who makes a decision he'll have parnasa from watches. He'll get parnasa from watches. And someone makes a decision that he'll get his parnasa from Hashem. He'll get it from Hashem. End of the story. So obviously to be holding on this level of the altar is beyond. But what does it show us? It shows us, and many people have in their own lives, I'm sure, seen such a thing, that sometimes you think, I'll do this, whoa, 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 and it gets you nowhere. Sometimes you take a deep breath, and you do the natural, and you do what's normal, and all of a sudden what happens? It goes good. Obviously, it's a difficult balance, this bitachon, but we're seeing from Avram Avinu is that if you push and you do more hishtadlus, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get more. It just means that Hashem's going to say, okay, you could put in 15 hours a day. Guess what? You're signing up for a lifetime of 15 hours a day. If you say no, I'm going to put in less, then you'll get less. And we'll conclude with a Mishnah on Avos that we said here in Shul a few weeks ago, which I think,
So you should have just dominated at that point?
That's the Ramban holds that, obviously. Because the Ramban says it was a Chit Gadol. So the Ramban held that Avram Avinu on his level, like you said, if he was Lech Lecha, if he was willing, he should have just walked right through. On our level, we can't fathom such a thing. It's like you're walking through the security checkpoint holding a gun and just walk through it. It's difficult, but that's what we're learning. We're learning that shtadlus goes by as much as you do it. So to conclude with the Mishnah and Avos that we said here a few weeks ago, which I just think for a chaver that learned some Torah is a very important Mishnah and Avos. The Mishnah and Avos teaches us kol makabel of old Torah, and you'll see how this ties in directly to shtadlus to bitachon. And perhaps it's a little bit of a key how to figure out what to do. Kol makabel of old Torah. If you accept upon yourself the yoke of Torah, what happens? Ma'avirin mimenu. Hashem removes from you all malchus v'all derech eretz. Hashem removes from you all the issues of the world. Then it doesn't work out. Explains the Chafetz Chaim. The more one gets involved in ruchnius endeavors, mikabel ol Torah, the less he'll have to spend time in all other things that could waste your time. Someone says, I have an hour a night. In that hour a night, I need to pay the bills, and I need to organize this, and I have a million things in my house to do. But he says, you know what? I'm going to come and I'm going to go to a shir for half hour. So, but how am I going to do it? I have this whole list to do. You know what Hashem says? You're mekabel ol Torah. Ma'avir min ol malchus al derech eretz. Somehow, we all know, did you really need an hour to go through all the bills? Did you need this? And we all know that this could come up and that a million things could happen or it cannot happen. Where does that come from? Says the Chafetz Chaim, it comes from your level and your commitment, which really is the framework of this intersection between bitachon and ishtadlus, which is what Rabbeinu Bechai writes about. That of course is ishtadlus. Of course, you need to have a job, you need to make a living, you need to be able to have parnasa. But then what? Then what? There's the 3, 4, 5, 6, 16, 18, 20 hours one could work. It's never ending. And you go look in the world, you see people, and you wonder, you have so much money. What are you doing? You're working 20 hours a day. Take a deep breath. The answer is, he showed Hashem, she showed Hashem, it showed Hashem, whatever it was, showed Hashem that my ishtadlus is 20 hours. Hashem says, Gavaldik, go enjoy your 20-hour ishtadlus. Or someone could say, you know what, my ishtadlus will be a little bit less. I'm going to put a little extra time into learning. I'll take extra time into davening. Somehow, no one knows how. No one knows how. And I'll say one interesting way how. No one knows how, but somehow it all works out. And it might work out as follows. And with this we'll conclude. We've spoken so many times on Meiser. Meiser. How does Meiser work? You give, Hashem gives back. How? That's the way it works. You know what Hashem says? Tasmi. Chanuni nabazais. Says Rav Moshe Feinstein in the Tshuva something incredible. You need to give a Meiser of your time. That's what Rav Moshe writes. Moshe is writing, if I remember correctly, the Tshuva was about either a Rebbe or a Bacher, whether you should take off time to learn with someone younger, who, it's a chesed. Rav Moshe says you need to Meiser of your time. You need to give of your time. If we're calling in Meiser, what happens when you give? Hashem gives you back. So you tell Hashem, I'm going to give Meiser. I don't know how it's going to work. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to learn the extra 10 minutes. How's it going to work? I don't know. Hashem says, you gave me 10, I'll give you back 10. You gave me 20, I'll give you back 20. You give me an hour, I'll give you back an hour. We do the ishtadlus. We work on the bitachon. We work on believing in Hashem. And slowly but slowly, we'll be able to connect to the Avram Avinu. And you know what the greatest thing is, what we get from all this? Is we become an Av. And then our children nourish that from us. And they'll become people that grow up. And we all know the famous Rav Avigdor Miller. What do you do when you come home at home? What do you do? Says Rav Avigdor Miller. You go to the bookshelf. You take the biggest sefer out. Go to the dining room table. And you open it up. You open it up. Rebbe, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm learning. Hey, you might get busy. Obviously, it's a little bit of a joke, but there's a little bit of seriousness to it also. If you're one that learns, what do the kids see? Kids see daddy, tati, abba, papa. He learns. Torah is important to him. He makes sure to come home. He might this, he might that. Doesn't make a difference. He takes a few minutes during the day. He does a chazara. He listens to this. He listens to that. Then it gets putting into the DNA, and like Rav Chaim Volozhin taught us, we become the Av that gives it over to our children. We should all be zeicha.